Yeah, that's entertaining.
To the return of Entertainment of Excellence, the podcast where we talk about films, TV, all of it. Hi, I'm Ollie.
I'm Thom.
And I'm Ben. Been missing
Wow, we
in
actually
action
managed
for a
to
couple
get
years.
it so that we didn't speak over each other.
Well,
We didn't
that's
even plan that. I'm quite proud.
Nice.
So Thom was our special guest when we initially did the podcast a couple of years ago. It looks like he's a special guest every week from now on.
Oh yeah, such a special guest that I plummeted the views. You're welcome.
Yeah. I think part of the reason we went missing was because I was meant to edit the episodes and I was a lazy person, so there's that.
No. Surely not.
No, I would never be.
So if you've been keeping up with the blog on the website, then you'll know that
2 years
given up on the podcast, so
yeah, we're
it's
gonna
a highly
try.
anticipated return.
We'll try be a bit more active from now on, but that's a pretty low bar to set.
It's only been 2 years. Come on. You were doing your mocks. It's
2
fine.
years is child's play. We can do 4 years next time.
It hasn't been 2 years of doing nothing. We have been working on this episode the whole of that time.
Yeah, so this is gonna be,
It's just
it's
been
gonna
hard
win
for
an
us to
Oscar.
speak to
It's
now.
not even a film, but it will win an Oscar.
Mm.
It's that good.
Well, it's
So should we actually...
the Oscars should follow our lead and not just do films and TV, but all of it.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, part of the reason we couldn't finish the episode until now is because we we weren't able to speak, which ties into the topic of today's episode.
Of course.
A Quiet Place.
We've just watched A Quiet Place.
Yeah.
2018 sci-fi horror.
Fresh out of a Netflix party.
Fresh.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Thoughts?
So fresh it's steamy.
Anyone want to sum up?
Should we do a plot synopsis, or
Yeah, let's do a plot synopsis. Who
Yeah.
wants to? Should I try and do a plot synopsis?
this may contain spoilers?
Ooh.
Oh no, we didn't put that at the start. This is so sad.
So, I'm sure you know their basic premise that set in post-apocalyptic world with aliens that will attack anything that makes sound. So it basically starts off, you see this family. There's this stupid little 4-year-old child that, for some reason, gets given a toy rocket by his sister, and then he turns it on, makes a lot of noise, and he dies. So that kind of creates a conflict between the daughter and supposedly her dad. Because she's like, oh, it's all my fault, and then now he hates me. And then it's basically just their misadventures. I don't know, the wife has a child, because that's a really good idea. And then basically John Krasinski dies, and it's left on a cliffhanger. So that's the basic plot.
Yeah.
I'm sure I did a great job explaining.
Yep.
Well, I mean, there's not really much more to say, to be honest. Yeah.
Suppose
I mean, you might think, how can they make 90 minutes of people just running away from some monsters and being quiet the whole time? But don't worry, they've made another 90 minutes of it because a sequel came out this year.
Has it come out? It's
I
not come
think
out.
so.
Oh.
Is it out? What?
I'm not sure if it came out or...
I'm just... Wow, we're so professional.
Well, I mean...
It says 2020.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little side note, the last time we did
it's not out yet.
the podcast, we seemed to be a bit stuck up and thought we knew everything. I think we'll be transparent this time that we don't know everything. We are literally just a few guys reviewing stuff with no qualifications whatsoever, so... yeah.
Everyday person's opinion.
Yeah. So,
my initial thought, I actually did quite enjoy it. I thought that an hour and a half of them running away and hiding from monsters was actually quite entertaining. They did manage to keep the tension up. I mean, I know some reviews are like, there is no suspense, it was just jump scare. But actually, I think it was around the middle section. I'd say my favourite segment was the kind of giving birth scene, I suppose you could say, which lasts a fair while. There's a whole, the wife goes into labour with the new baby, so obviously she's going to be very loud, but can't be. So there's a whole lot of, them trying to divert the creatures and stuff, and I thought the suspense was pretty good. Only few was that I wish there was more suspense, because it did rely a bit on a few jump scares, which I wasn't very happy with. I would have preferred it if it was just, full suspense instead of making raccoons jump off a roof and going boo.
Yeah.
I don't think the jump scares were that bad, to be honest.
They weren't that prevalent, I suppose, but just that the fact that there were a few.
It was just annoying when it happened.
The premise
made you groan.
was so good for creating loads of tension that I don't think they really needed them.
Yeah. Yeah, the movie
I also did really enjoy it, but there was a couple of things that didn't really explain that clearly. Like, the whole thing about how they defeat them at the end.
Yeah.
It's almost as if, how did they not try that before?
That is a bit odd.
Yeah. And it took them to the end of the film to actually work out how to actually defeat the aliens.
Yeah, basically they play a really high frequency, quite loud. And you would have guessed that creatures with very sensitive hearing wouldn't like loud noises. That's a surprise. And it's taken them over a year to find that out, which is slightly annoying, but, it's fine.
Yeah.
Although
I did think that,
go on.
Like, the use of facial expressions and the sign language was a really effective way of communication, to say that, there was barely any dialogue in it.
Yeah.
It was almost as if you always could relate to the characters.
The acting was very solid. There was a bit where I thought that John Krasinski had soiled himself. That would have been some great method acting, but unfortunately he did not.
Yeah. Acting was definitely one of the highlights of this film, especially from the parents. Like,
yeah, and the child actors, to be fair, they didn't let it down. They were good. They were well cast. It could have really pulled down the entire film if they were just terrible, but they did well. I recognise the son, who is apparently named Marcus Abbott. I don't know how you get the names, but they call him Marcus Abbott. I think he was in Wonder as if you've seen it, the main character's called Augie. I think he's Augie's best friend. Not sure. So he's been in stuff before. So he was good. The daughter was good as well, who is a deaf actress, and she's deaf in this. So that kind of plays a fairly big role, actually. Another thing I liked, let's keep going on stuff I mainly liked. I thought that the design of the creatures was pretty cool. I don't know what you think of them. It made sense that the kind of like armor coming off of the head with the high frequencies was cool, and the really disgusting ears where you just go into their head. That was good. So
quite reminiscent of Stranger Things, I thought.
I suppose a similar monster design, and obviously I bet it will have been inspired a bit from that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if it reminded me of any other monster.
I swear there's something in Black Mirror they remind me of.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the fact that not only were they well designed, but they didn't need... The directors, it seemed like they consciously didn't try and shoehorn the monsters into every shot.
Yes.
Because a lot of horror films, you're constantly bombarded with visual horror and, wow, this creature looks horrible. This creature is going to eat the protagonist. Whereas this was a lot more suspenseful, and whilst it wasn't like a complete lack of seeing the monsters, it was reserved enough to keep the suspense going without lots of unnecessary focus on the visual aspects. So when it, like, especially in the finale, when the mother and the children are down in the basement and there's the one monster, there's a lot of shots of it there, and it's more impactful because you haven't really seen them that clearly throughout the whole film. There have been close-up shots of the monsters, but they've always been quite brief, and it's more been focused on the characters' reactions to that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's also kind of links with how at the start they just kind of throw you straight in. They don't kind of give a backstory straight away of what's going on. It's a bit later on when you actually find out the situation.
Yeah, it's very much show don't
It
tell.
isn't always really clear, but you can obviously see the tension between the family.
Talking tension between the family, I wish we had seen a bit more of that. I think it would have been interesting to explore kind of the relationship between the family, because there's going to be like way more tension than there was. I mean, the one bit of tension that they did have in where there was the daughter blaming herself for the son's death at the start was kind of like fake. It's like, of course her dad's still gonna love her. Like, it's not really much tension. Even if they'd like tried to play it up a bit so that he did actually kind of despise her a bit, it would have been a bit more interesting. But
or even if he did still love her, but it was more in question. Like he answered the boy immediately, well, pretty much immediately. Like, yeah, of course I do. But if there was maybe a pause and he'd said it with less conviction, then possibly that could have helped a bit.
Yeah, and even with more like, you know, I'm sure other conflicts would come about with being stuck in silence for over a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a little bit with the boy who was when the mum was teaching him maths, and he was like he really didn't want to do it, but then she'd sort of consoled him by saying, "Look, your father wants you to learn this for when we're old, and you need to look after us."
Yeah,
it's possible that maybe that you could have played into that being a fear of him losing his parents, perhaps, and I don't know.
That would have been more interesting, because obviously when they said like, "Oh, you need to look after yourself when we're old," you know, they probably were more worried that they would get ripped to shreds by alien predators or whatever. So I wish there was a bit more conflict with that, or I don't know, just anything.
I feel that
some more family conflict.
Yeah, I feel like that was probably the mum trying to put on an optimistic face and go, yeah, when we're old, but deep down they both know that it's unlikely they'll both reach that point, and it would have been more interesting if they'd explored that. And because they're all stuck in a really terrifying situation, and whilst it's obvious they've been there for a year plus, you know, they seemed maybe a little bit too used to it, and you don't really get the sense that, you know, this is an abnormal situation. I don't really know where I'm going with this. I'm sort of speaking off the top of my head.
What was your opinion on the pregnant side of it? So, you know, it just seems a bit irresponsible, and also so soon after the loss of the first child. I mean,
well, emotionally, it could be to try and push that out. I can see why people would do it. Yeah, like, I get people being annoyed, but it kind of annoys me. It's like, oh no, the characters in this film aren't perfect.
True.
How terrible.
I guess it could have been like a selfish motivation in the parents that, wow, this is an extra person to look after, not just the parents, but the siblings as well.
Yeah. Maybe I could have explored it a bit more. There were a few things, I guess, put in that would have made really good conflicts, but in the end were more to help set pieces. So it felt the whole ordeal.
Yeah.
But it would have been cool to explore stuff behind it, because it's only the film. They could have used a bit more time and explored some of the things, such as also, I mean, maybe they wanted more mystery behind it, but kind of the origin of the monsters, although they may put that in part 2.
Honestly,
possibly. But I'm
don't really
not massively happy with there being a part 2, because it felt like the film was going to finish in another 20 minutes. Like they put on the loud noise, they gear it with a shotgun, and you're like, cool, here's the action-packed 20-minute finale, and then it just ends.
Yeah,
okay,
it's
right.
another example of, wow, I don't think they need a sequel to this, because whilst that wasn't the perfect ending, you did leave feeling that there was some action that was cut out. You know, you could at least understand if they'd chosen, okay, this is how we're ending it. This is the artistic decision we're making.
Yeah.
You couldn't really. They didn't really show sort of the wider implications of the monsters very well, I don't think, because there was the one scene with the man in the woods, but it might have been quite nice to see the effects that it was having on other people, or just kind of, I mean, it showed like the post-apocalypse town sort of setting at the start, but I think it'd have been nice to delve into that a bit more.
Yeah, the impacts on like wider society and how it broke down. Yeah,
which again, maybe they're going to explore it in part 2, but that's the annoying thing about putting it in 2 parts without kind of establishing there's going to be 2 parts, is just that it feels a bit unfinished almost.
Just because it was so successful that they just
but they must have known it would be successful, because they were very much like, right, this is going to be 2.
Yeah.
But only right at the end you find that out. What did you think of... Because obviously the film is a lot about sound. What did you think of the soundtrack songs?
So the original music, like that was composed for the film, I think it wasn't memorable, but it served its purpose in building tension and suspense.
That's my problem. Like, it did serve its purpose, but I feel like because it is all about sound, they could have done something really unique, but I can't think of what.
The sound design
I think
really
they could have done was even have no soundtrack. But I get that maybe they want to play on emotions and scenes and stuff and build tension. But because it's all about them being quiet, if there was no noise, then...
That might have worked when it was the action scenes, I guess.
Yeah. I feel like it could have worked with no soundtrack, but maybe they were worried that would be too odd.
But even if it was with a soundtrack, I think they went rather conventional. It sounded like it was mainly an orchestra, but with maybe some subtle synth elements, but not in the bombastic way, in the fact that it was quiet but used to build tension. But it didn't really take any risks. Like, perhaps you could have used some synths for some sound design and to otherwise, apart from just a classical orchestra.
I'm trying to think of stuff like it. I can't think of an idea, but I feel like they could have done something really unique. As long as it's all about sound, maybe even using kind of sounds of nature and stuff to make a soundtrack, but I don't know how that would work. I don't know. I just felt like it could have done something more. And I do hate when people say, "Oh, I didn't like it, but I have no idea how to improve it." But that's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
How would you say it compares to sort of the similar horror or sci-fi films?
I'd say it did build tension well, but because it had those jump scares and stuff, I'm going to compare it to Alien.
Yeah.
We just didn't get the same level of tension, even though it had, the scenes of them hiding. But I think it's just done better. Maybe even hide the monsters a bit, because you kind of get a glimpse of them in the first 10 minutes. I know they weren't focused on a lot, but you could have probably hidden them a bit more. Maybe.
Yes, I think I certainly think they shouldn't have revealed in the first 10 minutes. Like the boy getting murdered was a good way, an interesting way to open, but you saw him getting murdered. It would have been more interesting maybe if you hadn't seen that and you were waiting another 10, 15 minutes to even realize that there were monsters, because I don't think they'd even revealed until that point.
Yeah, I think it just said it's sound on a newspaper or something.
Yeah, it would have been more interesting to have maybe 20 minutes of them hiding, but you don't really know what from. And you know that the boys got murdered, and again, you don't know what from. So,
because the start, like one of the most thrilling bits was literally the toy rocket being dropped off the shelf.
yeah,
I was probably like at that moment where the daughter like slides and catches it, and you like that moment is thrilling, even if you have no idea that there's deadly monsters that will attack people that make any noise.
You just see that they're being quiet.
The reaction of it. Yeah.
You don't know why, but the urgency and the reaction, the speed at which she goes to grab it, you can feel that.
I do think that they could, like, it's only 90 minutes. They could have expanded the exposition a bit more with the boy, and as you say, maybe have like an extra 10 minutes of them hiding before they're actually revealed. And then also the ending, I think, could have been expanded. I mean, obviously they want to, if they make a sequel, then they'll make more money, I guess. But I think for this film alone, if they just put it as one film, but maybe made it 2 hours, so it would probably, I think it would probably get a generally better response.
Yeah.
I mean, it is still very popular, but
there's more you could have done with building tension and setting the scene.
But let's go back to some more positives. It's that I liked that there wasn't much like exposition ham-fisted in your face. I didn't describe stuff. So, for example, the stuff with the weakness being the high-pitched frequency. I mean, for one, it didn't have a cheesy line going like, oh, their weakness is a high-pitched frequency or whatever.
Yeah.
But that was actually probably because of the limitations. But also the fact that it moves this very hard-looking skin and then they shoot them with a shotgun. It makes you go, oh, right, I see. They've got this really strong like armor plating that will only move with a high-pitched noise, which is why they've not just got the military out and gunned them all down.
Yeah.
But it didn't have to say that. It didn't have one of them, a character going on some speech telling you every detail of the monsters.
Yeah.
And that also kind of reveals why they've been able to survive, because they've been able to adapt, whereas you'd probably assume that everyone else would see them and just trying to gun them down straight away.
Yeah.
The family
I like that.
Yeah, the family also probably had an advantage in that they had a deaf daughter, and they don't explicitly say it, but you can work it out that they've been able to survive because they could communicate without making noise.
With sign language.
Yeah, with sign language, so they have an advantage there. The film in general is just really good at showing stuff and not telling it outright with cheesy lines, which is what a lot of film, like especially like blockbusters, do. They'll have and even like nothing's perfect. Like even Star Wars has the opening crawl with the exposition shoved in your face, which works a bit. It works for its own story, but if other movies copy that, then it's just not original and it might not work. Whereas here, it just sort of slowly brings in some of the elements using like newspapers as well to
that was
sort
good.
of set,
and also
set the scene.
Kind of showing the family's defense as well. Well, that without having some cheesy sequence of them setting everything up.
Yeah.
Like and what stuff does. Like there's one moment where when the mother's going into labour, she pulls a switch and the lights go from white to red, and then that is obviously some kind of warning signal, and all the other family panics. But it didn't need to go earlier in the film, like go, if we're ever in danger, we will make the lights go red. Okay.
Yeah, I really like
didn't need
that.
to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it was very clear what purpose it served, but you didn't see them setting it up. So
Yes.
when she turned it on, you're a little bit surprised, but you know what it's for, and it's good that they haven't wasted time going, oh, here's some lights. Can you help me set up the lights? Which really wasn't.
For
wouldn't
no
have been
reason.
needed.
These definitely aren't going to come into the film later.
The only time that they did foreshadow things was when when the mother was walking up the stairs and
With the nail.
It had the nail.
But I think that was a good that was a good use of it though, because then when you see her walking down the stairs, you're like already like, oh no.
Yeah, you have that sense of dread that you know something's going to happen that the character doesn't.
Yeah, dramatic irony.
Yeah.
So I'd like that, even though it was obvious someone's going to sit on it, but it kind of, built the suspense.
Yeah,
so
that was just kind of a really uncomfortable scene, just all of that with, she's dealing with the agony of the birth, the agony of her foot, and then the monster's chasing after her. So
that was the best
really easy to
set piece.
And she pretty much manages to keep silent throughout it, but you know that how incredibly hard that would be to do, so you have a huge sense of empathy built for the character.
Yeah.
And when the fireworks go off, she kind of just lets out that scream.
Yeah.
Yes. Very
when
very
the
good.
dad comes to find her and thinks she's dead, and you just see like her hands against the shower with blood, and you know she's just been through hell.
That's probably something they put in the trailer just to make it look like that's she's dead or something. But
I don't think I've actually seen the trailer.
Neither have I.
No, but to be fair, when the father was going to find her and thought she was dead, that could have been a cliche, but I didn't feel it was. I don't know why. I don't know what it was they did, but somehow it made it relatable in the fact that this is how he'd react if she did die, and then there's the relief of not only finding her alive but also the child alive, and then the next scene where he's going to protect them and hide them under the mattress so that the monsters can't hear them.
Although to be honest, I did not think she was dead at all. So
no,
maybe they could have done that a bit better, but I wasn't worried.
Oh, another foreshadowing thing that happened was when he walked out and there was pipes leaking or something, and there was water draining down, and you knew that they're either going to drown or they're going to have to get out of some more tension. And then
that's another instance of the cool world building of, and show not tell. Was when she's pregnant and you see the oxygen tank, the mask, and this padded box. You're like, oh, okay. So they're gonna dump the baby in there, close it in a box, so it can be quiet. But it doesn't have to explain this is for the baby, this is for that and stuff. So that was another good thing. So yes.
Do you think that the show not tell aspect is the directors themselves, or just kind of the genre of the film being silent?
I mean, I guess it's forced upon it, but
you could do it badly, obviously. But
I could have had the long scenes of exposition with just sign language.
Yeah. But I think it was probably also a director's choice, in that.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
I just want to see.
Good to interview them next time.
Yeah, we'll have them on the podcast.
Yeah.
So next we need to
Yeah,
tell
that's
you
interesting.
about our
So-
sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends.
Because it's directed by a relatively new director. Basically, the only other things he's directed are 3 episodes of The American Office, and The Hollers, which is a rom-com by the looks of it, starring him, of course. So, for a pretty new director, I thought it was quite impressive.
Yeah, I'd not heard of him before this.
Have you not heard of the American Office?
I have heard of the American Office. I just didn't know who directed it. 'Cause the British Office is obviously better because it's
Well, he
British.
didn't direct it, but he's like the main character.
Oh, fair enough.
What? Yeah.
I'm just a true patriot.
Have you even seen the UK Office?
Yeah, I've seen the UK Office.
Okay,
Well, I haven't
okay.
seen all of it, but I've seen like.
He also directed another film called Brief Interviews with Hideous Man, which is a comedy.
Yeah.
That was his first one.
Groovy.
So, but he's not done, directed thrillers before. So,
Yeah, well, if this was his first time, then obviously, it's not perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than a lot of other directors' first attempts. So,
yeah.
I'd like to see what he comes out with in the future. Just not sequels. I don't like unnecessary sequels.
Oh dear. He's credited in A Quiet Place Part 2. I hope they don't bring him back to life
Force Ghost.
somehow.
Oh, it might be a flashback or something.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I also like that it has an IMDb rating. It's not out yet.
Oh, it's
Why do
not
people-
out yet.
That's why I thought, but I think it's just critics and stuff.
It's not. It's just people
Does it have a
rating
release date?
films. The top review is someone saying,
Yeah, we should know
So
where
giving
the
it a 10 out of
professional
10 saying-
critics.
please stop reviewing movies not already out.
Yeah.
That's the only actual review, but people have just put, they just must be putting like, I'm gonna review this.
Hmm.
Bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
So it's a 7.5 on IMDb. Do you think that's justified, or do you think it should be higher or lower?
I'd say that's a pretty good rating.
I'd go 7, but yeah. I don't know.
Because
It had a lot of promise, and it did deliver well on the stuff that it did do well, but the stuff that it didn't do well was because it wasn't so much annoyance that they existed, it was annoyance that the flaws existed in face of what did go well and what it could have been. So, for example, the jump scares, they weren't needed. It did a good job at building up tension, so it was you just groans when the jump scares came in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was enjoyable. I'd probably watch again at some point.
yeah,
Yeah, if you want just like a fun, thrilling ride, then it's pretty good.
yeah, I'd probably agree with her on 7, maybe a 7.5.
Yeah. What would you say, Tom?
I'd say probably should we compromise at 7.4?
Ooh,
Ooh, is that allowed?
no.
Am I
I'm gonna
allowed
have to
that?
go 7.39 here.
As a guest, no.
Sorry.
Excuse me, you're a guest. You don't your your rating doesn't count. You're just in the state
I mean,
of
if you look at-
permanent guest.
If you look at It, I mean, that came out a year before, and I think that kind of had a similar reception. That's a 7.3.
Hmm.
How would you compare it to It?
Yeah, I'd say it's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe.
I hope its sequel isn't the same as It 2.
yeah.
Oh, please. What?
Let's try not to go on a tangent there, but
Yeah. Well, needless to say, it wasn't the best example of a sequel.
uh,
Really?
So it's September 2020 is when the sequel
Yeah.
will be delayed.
I just watched the trailer. I was still listening to you. Don't worry. And it seems,
It seems to have a much bigger cast.
yeah, it seems to be on a bigger scale. I mean, it's got Cillian Murphy in, who's he's done a horror film before. He did 28 Days Later,
Yeah.
which I've not seen, but it's supposed to be really good. But I think this one seems to be on a bigger scale. It had a small clip of what I assume was when the monsters first arrived, so maybe we'll get some answers on that. But there's also seems to be a lot more movement and not on a smaller scale. And I don't know how I feel about that because I saw them. It looked like they were trekking somewhere with the mum with a shotgun out. So I don't know what the tone of the next film's going to be like. But I kind of liked having basically one location in the part one.
Yeah,
So hopefully it's
that
not too just action. I don't know.
Yeah, that was another aspect I did quite enjoy. The fact that the whole thing was built around one set, and it was using places you've already seen before in new ways. So, for example, you've seen like the scene where the mum and dad are dancing to music in earphones because they can't have it on speaker, obviously, and that's like a little romantic scene. But then later on, it's the
Cut this out.
what? Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
But then later on,
to
it's
the
used as
toilet.
the finale. Oh. What a
Yeah,
comment.
it's all kind of built around one set and 4 characters, pretty much, which is pretty effective.
I liked the small cast.
Yeah.
And
I was
fact
going to
that-
say something else.
and the fact that
yeah.
sorry.
Just one thing that we pointed out when we were watching, it doesn't really clearly outline, what noise is, how kind of sensitive the aliens are to noise, like what can be defined as, would set them off.
Yeah.
So there's a few times in it, near the start, when it's not really, most of the time near the start, they're just being as quiet as possible. And like when he's in the car, you might think, maybe that would aggravate the alien. So they never really make that clear, but I guess that kind of show not tell aspect.
Yeah. There's a question as to, well, how much noise is it until they can hear it and associate it with prey. And we were sort of having conversations in that, well, the rocket must have been quite loud to the kids, but not too loud to the surroundings. So, is someone running going to set it off? Is someone, playing with the car going to set them off? And it was, how loud can you be until they come for you, essentially. That question that remained unanswered.
Mm-hmm.
I guess a little something I thought whilst watching it was a gripe I have with a lot of horror movies is that the characters don't really seem to make good decisions in that, but I guess that does sort of mean that they're more voice crack. They're more relatable in that they make mistakes and they, in the heat of the moment, they aren't the most logical. So yeah.
I'd say that they're motivated, though. They have motivations behind actions that maybe aren't as responsible.
Yeah.
So, it's not just like, I'm going to do this to put me in danger, to make a tense scene.
Yeah.
At the start, I predicted that, the older boy would die just because he kind of seemed more expendable because they hadn't actually set anything up for him. But it was kind of more emphatic that the younger one died, but he just seemed more of a more important character at the start. But I guess cathartic response again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Talked
we've.
about enough.
What did you say, sir?
Have we we move on?
Yeah. Well, we've reached 40 minutes. Should we keep going for an hour? We sort of set an
Yeah.
hour as the time.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Well, so we've got recommendations now, I guess.
Recommend. So then, Ollie, you had some. You were going to recommend something, weren't you? You have a little jingle for the recommendation section. Let's just pretend we've got a jingle. And that leads us into the recommendation section.
Yeah, the new intro music Thom did, so that's pretty groovy.
With some classic clips.
Yeah, with the Chewbacca noises from episode 2. Only OG Entertainment of Excellence fans will remember this.
Only Lewis G will understand.
Oh, Lewis G, if you're out there, you're a Lewis G.
This episode is dedicated to you.
If you seriously, if you want us to start a Patreon or an OnlyFans, we're here.
We can have a bonus episode every week.
Yeah, sure.
Well, for £1,000 a month, we'll do a personalised episode for you. And we say all entertainment.
So, Ollie, your recommendation?
Recommend before I say something else I'll regret.
We decided to skip trailers this week, didn't we? Because it's not really sure when stuff's going to come out, and there's not much being produced. So for the recommendations, I was thinking about maybe holding this off, but because there's been a third season release which I haven't watched yet, so not all this might be fully up to date. But I want to recommend the TV show Westworld, which is an HBO original based on a 1973 sci-fi film of the same name. It's directed by Jonathan Nolan, who worked on like The Dark Knight and Inception, and Lisa Joy. And it's basically a mix of sci-fi and western. It's set around a like recreational park where, well, it's mostly like immoral people go to fulfill their fantasies, pretty much. And it basically explores both. They're called hosts, the AI that are in the park. It basically explores what their function is, and it also has the contrast of the guests, which are the humans, and also the people working to create the park. And it's got great action, very compelling characters with some great acting, as well as Anthony Hopkins is one of the main characters. He plays Robert Ford in season 1. So the first season, basically, as I say, is kind of asking about humanity and their existence. And there's like a motif of a maze that goes throughout. She sort of is revealed throughout the season what it is. And then the second season is about the host rebellion, and now it's the humans who are more powerless, with the roles being reversed. And although it's one of my favourite TV programs, there is a lot of criticism of it being overly like convoluted. And a lot of people say that the lack of clarity, because it's not really told in linear narratives, and there's different timelines which you kind of fluctuate between. So a lot of people say that kind of makes it less impactful, the big the big reveals and stuff, because there's so many twists and turns. It's sometimes quite hard to keep track of what's going on. But film. So when everything does come together, and when you finally are able to get your head around what's actually happened, it is apparently season 3 is told in a more linear fashion. So I know that it's been having good reviews and it's been renewed for a 4th season as well, but it's an 8.7 on IMDb, and I think it's a really interesting and innovative show that I'd recommend for anyone who's a fan of sci-fi or westerns, I guess.
Cool. I have wanted to watch it for quite a while. What can I watch it on?
It's on Now TV, and I have the DVDs, but I can't exactly lend it to you now. But
if you want to watch Westworld, Ollie will lend you his DVDs.
Yeah,
send you address.
I'll come around, Lewis.
Slide into his Twitter DMs that he never checks.
Talking of convoluted, a TV show I just watched was The Witcher, which I would also recommend. I guess if you like sci-fi, you probably like fantasy, so we're all right. Which I really enjoyed, but I guess what might turn some people off is that it has basically 3 storylines that are all actually set at different times, but it isn't, it doesn't throw in your face that it is, so it might take you a bit to realise that they're not running in parallel, as it did for me, when it kind of shows characters that are way younger than they should be, or things that have already happened. But I think the plot works well. There are bits of pacing that I think it kind of slows down a bit, but in general, it was very enjoyable. There are a load of good action scenes. Like the first episode, at the end of the first episode, there's a sword fight with Geralt, played really well by Henry Cavill, and it's just got probably the best sword fighting choreography I've ever seen. It might be my favourite action scene of all time, although I haven't seen Inception that recently, so I can't be sure on that. But probably it's definitely my favourite sword fighting scene of all time. It's just amazing direction and choreography. So action's cool, good fantasy elements. Henry Cavill's really good as Geralt, so that's a pretty solid watch if you've got 8 hours free, which I'm sure everyone does at the moment.
Is that based on the games?
No, you fool! It's based on the series of books, which so originally, apparently, the character was created by the author as part of a short story competition, I think, that he submitted to a magazine. So then the first 2 books are collections of short stories featuring The Witcher, which makes sense. If you watch the TV show, there's a few of the episodes with Geralt in that you kind of like, I could see this as kind of a separate little story. Like there's one where he's hunting a dragon, one where he's told to kill this cursed princess, stuff like that. So you can see that being episodic. But then I think the next 5 books are all novels that run on from each other. But I think they managed to have it well in the show with Geralt's little adventures, but also the overarching plot. But I know that for some people it's a bit confusing, but I think it's okay. It does it quite well. I'm greedy, so I want to do more recommendations.
Oh, go ahead. I've already got one.
Because we do all of it, yeah, I'm going to recommend a book now. I hope that's not too controversial.
I mean,
I've not actually finished it either, which is even better.
That's classic Entertainment of Excellence style.
Classic episode 1 style, reviewing all of Dirk Gently from one episode. Although I think I'm about a third of the way through, so I'm a bit better than reviewing Dirk Gently. It's called Consider Phlebas. Sci-fi fans will probably have heard of it. It's a part of the Culture series. It's the first book that was published by Ian M. Banks. So it's a sci-fi. I think it's classed as a space opera, and it follows the main character called Bora Horza, his name is just Hauser. He's called Hauser, and he is part of the species that are called changers. So they can other people look like, but they also have poisonous teeth and nails and stuff. So that's cool. And it's basically thrown into the middle of this war between something called the culture, which is very much believes in technology and intelligence, and it's quite anti-religion, maybe not explicitly, but basically the other people they're fighting is the Idaron, who are a completely alien species. Like they've got 3 legs and really wide heads, apparently. And they're basically very religious, and they're trying to, they believe that everything should be in a certain place, so they're basically trying to conquer the universe and the culture, trying to stop them. But the main character was working with the Idarons, even though he's not an Idaron himself, because he doesn't like the culture. He doesn't like their reliance on technology. So he was sent to capture what's called a mind, a mind from the culture that managed to kind of escape and land on a planet, which is a massive AI thing that's extremely intelligent. And if they managed to capture that, then it would give the Idarons a massive advantage. But when he's on the ship with the Idarons to go, they get attacked by a general contact unit ship from the culture, which are massively powerful and win basically every fight they're in. So he gets chucked into space in his spacesuit, ready to get picked up. But instead of getting picked up by the Idarons, he gets picked up by basically a gang of space pirates in the clear air turbulence. And then from there, he has a few misadventures, which are all cool. And I believe it's basically quite episodic, and then it will all lead towards him going to this planet to get the mind. So, for example, there's been like a heist at a temple, but they realise that all the walls are made of reflective crystal, so when they shoot their laser guns, they reflect back, and a lot of them end up dying from that. And then they go to this, it's called an orbital, which is like a massive ring that's been artificially made by the culture, that's got these like kilometre-long ships on that have cities on. But it's trying to be overtaken by the Idarons that are about to explode it. So they think they can raid it for some really powerful laser guns before it's exploded because everyone's left. And the ship hits an iceberg and starts sinking. So then they get on a shuttle and they end up landing in this island of like weird cannibal religion people. It's really fun. There's a lot of fun sci-fi action against a background of political intrigue and conflicting ideas. So I recommend that.
Groovy.
You should
Is
read
that
it.
the sci-fi like pseudonym for Ian Banks, like the author of the Wasp Factory and stuff?
Which I just read the Wasp Factory as well, which is why
Yeah, I've read that. I have all his books.
I think we've got all the culture books, and also I don't know how many Ian Banks books he wrote, but I think we've got about 5 of them.
Yeah,
Could be
my
all.
dad's
I don't know.
a big fan of him.
Yeah, the Wasp Factory is also good.
Yeah, bit strange, but
It's a bit odd, but it's quite short, dark, intriguing. It's good old murder, if you like.
Good old murder.
And twisted minds and torturing wasps. Then read the Wasp Factory.
Groovy.
Is there anything you want to recommend, Ben?
Well, I hadn't got anything prepared, but there's this film I watched recently, and by that I mean like in the last week. It's called After Hours, and it's by, I'm gonna butcher his last name, Martin Scorsese.
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah.
He's a very famous director, but okay.
Well, I don't know. I've never heard anyone pronounce his name.
Have you not?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It's a really weird film. It's sort of a comedy, but like not so much in that it's trying to make you laugh, in that it's everything that could go wrong goes wrong for this like one man. He's essentially just goes on a date and it all spirals downwards afterwards. I'll just keep the recommendation short. It's interesting to watch. It's fun. Fun's not so much in it. It's traditionally fun and more that like it's interesting to watch this character go more and more insane because everything that's going wrong is going wrong for him. To the point where like halfway through the film it's no longer believable and there's just so much going wrong that you're unsure whether it's real, whether it's a dream, and the whole film's sort of up to interpretation by the ending. So, yeah, just recommend that, really. I'll have something prepared next week.
Some Scorsese. I mean, Goodfellas is amazing. That's probably my favourite gangster film ever. I prefer that to The Godfather. Maybe that's a controversial opinion, but I think Goodfellas is better. I've seen Mean Streets, which was probably his first film, which I thought was all right. It wasn't great. And I also recently watched Shutter Island, which is like a psychological thriller, which was very good. I enjoyed that as well. So yeah, I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Well, we're 56 minutes in. Anything else we'd particularly like to say?
This show come out on Netflix that I've been interested to watch called Hollywood, which is about like actors trying to get big, and I think it's like 50s Hollywood, which I thought I watched the trailer. I was like, oh, that's kind of got an interesting premise, and it's got a 7.7, which is decent rating. But when I saw it, I was like, wow, this could be amazing. Maybe it's not amazing, but it's probably decent. I just thought I had an interesting premise, so I'm looking forward to watching that. Is there anything you're looking forward to? Oh, we can talk about the Star Wars announcement.
Oh, yeah.
So there was the Star Wars Twitter account recently tweeted that they're making a new Star Wars film that is going to be directed and co-written by Taika Waititi, and also co-written by I can't remember what she's called. She wrote 1917, I believe. So I assume it's going to be a spin-off, seeing as we've
exhausted all possibilities in the main universe.
Hopefully. And I'll be interested to see it because Christy Wilson Cairns, she's called. I do want to see it because Taika Waititi's films I really like, especially his earlier stuff like What We Do in the Shadows and Hunt for the Wilder People. Yeah, those two are really good. I watched What We Do in the Shadows. It's my first film that I've seen by him. Brilliant. It's hilarious. But also he showed he can do action.
Have you seen the TV show?
I've not seen the TV show, but he didn't make that, so irrelevant.
There's a cameo in it.
Oh. Well, he's also proved he can do action with Thor Ragnarok, which...
Ben's favourite.
For some reason, Ben hates it. I don't know why.
Well, I
think it's really
I don't
good.
hate it. It's just the weakest of like the.
Don't say the Thors, please.
I wasn't going to say the Thors, but I'll say it now just to annoy you.
No,
It's the weakest of the Thors. Yeah, I didn't mind his action, but his overuse of comedy I thought didn't suit that one film. But to be fair, I did love What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
Was less so about what Hunt for the Wilder People, but it wasn't bad. You know, I enjoyed it. So, I don't know. If it's a Star Wars spin-off, I think there's probably less pressure on trying to take it seriously. I think he might. Yeah. If he makes it comedic, it might work. It might not.
But then it's also written. It's going to be co-written by Christy Wilson Cairns, who just wrote 1917, which is a gritty.
Won that Effie Oscar.
War film. Yeah. Did it actually win Oscars?
Yeah.
Did it? I've not really.
I don't know. I think it won more.
It won 3 Oscars. It probably won.
I think it was the
sounding. But so it might be more Star Wars spin-off stuff because obviously the Mandalorian's come out, and I actually really enjoyed it. Not like episodes 4 and 5; they were a bit dull filler. But like the first 3 episodes were like, whoa, massively fast-paced, loads of action, brilliant, and then the last 2 episodes as well, they actually brought back the main plot and some good action in that, as well as Giancarlo Esposito, brilliant role. Obviously, love him as Gus Fring in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, and he's also the dentist in Payday 2. Some good voice acting. But that was really good, like a space western. And just taking it in directions like that, because obviously the Star Wars universe is pretty vast, and you can explore a lot of things. And all we've got at the moment is literally just there's going to be another film.
Yeah.
So we have no idea what it's going to be, but
Yeah.
I'm interested to see what it'll do.
Yeah, parts of me wishes they'd leave the Star Wars universe alone, but like if they're doing spin-offs and they're going in original directions, then yeah, it could work well. So
yeah,
like I haven't seen The Mandalorian, but like I've heard really, really good reviews about it. So
they've already started season 3, haven't they?
Of The Mandalorian.
What have they?
Even though season 2 hasn't been released.
I know they're like making season 2.
Nice.
I didn't know they were making season 3.
I'm pretty sure they are.
Okay, Disney, calm down. Please don't drag it out forever. But because it could work, because if you go back to Consider Phoebus, which is part of the Culture series, that all of the books in the Culture series are individual stories. And I know that some of them are a lot different. So in this Consider Phoebus one, it's more kind of episodic adventures of this changer. Whereas I know other ones are very much, it's got a main plot and it sticks to the plot. So I think you can do a lot of things in sci-fi universes.
Cool. Right, so we've sort of passed an hour. Thank you for listening, I guess. And if you are listening, especially you, Lewis G, if you're listening, you're the guy.
We'll try and get a bit more frequent uploads schedule.
Maybe once a year, maybe rather than once 2 years. Apologies.
Also, if anyone has any questions, then where can they find us?
Well, I mean, first of all, you could leave a comment on a YouTube video if you're watching or listening there. We'll try and get back to them. Otherwise, we've got a Twitter account. I can't actually remember the handle. Is it like @ELV Podcast?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Chubby's gonna look it up.
I think it is. No, I'm pretty sure it is. And then we've also got a website with a blog that the last update is we haven't left the podcast from 2 years ago. So yeah, there's that. We might look at other ways of contacting in the future, but for now we're just trying to get back on our feet. Apologies about the audio quality, but you know, it's not ideal given quarantine.
Yes, this is improvised.
So
improvised setup.
So Tom, how did you feel about being a guest today?
Yeah, I think this was a solid episode. We talked about some interesting things, you know. I think we're amazing reviewers.
Yeah, we're very professional. If you have any sponsorship deals, come at us.
Yes.
Would you like to come on the podcast again in the future?
I'm pretty sure that I'm going to be on like every time now.
Oh, excuse me.
Ollie from 2 years
as
ago.
a guest only.
As a special guest.
Yeah, you're not just a guest, you're special.
The sponsorship deals would probably only be advertising to us.
Yeah. Okay, so
well, see you in 4 years.
Thanks for listening. See you in 4 years.
Alright, see ya.
Alright, see you.
Alright, see you. Yeah, that's entertaining.